Rivalries. It's what makes for great drama. In every Bannerlord campaign, you're also going to have a rival. In this new series, we'll cover each kingdom's rivals and show you how to crush them with battlefield command and tactics. Alright friends, welcome back again to another episode of Tactical Enlightenment. Our YouTube channel is dedicated to all things Bannerlord related, but especially battlefield command and tactics. An emphasis on the tactics here. That is what we do. That is our expertise on this channel. Many good Bannerlord channels, including one that we're going to reference here in this first battle, and that is Strat Gaming Guides. I don't know the guy, but I've got the greatest respect for his channel, his quality content. He's really an authority on Bannerlord. However, we're going to try to improve upon one of the tactics that he's employing in his video against the Sturgians here. He is using 4 squares, an archer division or 2 archer divisions spread out behind, and then cavalry divisions on the wing to counterattack as the enemy closes. Now this whole series is going to be a rivalry series where we take on essentially the main likely enemy that each kingdom is going to face. In this case, we are playing Sturgia against Battania. More about our army composition here in a minute. Now, his typical strategy would then be to countercharge the enemy cavalry as they come in, leaving the archers back there to spray the enemy, and then once the enemy was significantly engaged with his infantry, to charge in a shield wall with his 4 different shield divisions. So what I've done here is reenact the scenario he was showing on his video, as well as we could fight it on our own, in our own game with similar circumstances, and see what kind of results we can come up with. Of course, things aren't identical because we don't have his save game. In fact, it looks like he's playing a campaign game for his episode. This is actually just one of the custom battle menus. The delightful thing about the custom battle menu for this case, though, is we'll be able to ramp up the difficulty and show you deep within the nuts and bolts of the system here. Now this is going to be a several episode series. We're going to try to cover a lot of the kingdom's rivals in this series, and it's basically going to be a guide on how you deal with the most prevalent enemy in your case. Now we'll probably also do the Khuzait versus Sturgia as well. Sturgia is probably the most asked about kingdom, and that is because people struggle to fight with Sturgia in Bannerlord. There's a really simple reason for that. Archers are very powerful in Bannerlord, and they have some of the worst archers. Cavalry is some of the weakest units as far as their strength, and Sturgian's strength supposedly is their cavalry, right? Now their infantry gets a lot of props. Oh, they're badass with their axes. They're not very good either. They're very mediocre units. About the only thing you could say with Sturgia that has an advantage on Battania is you have better defensive units, right? In other words, those shields allow you to absorb arrows better than most of the other kingdoms. That's about it, right? You have to really squint to see any kind of advantages that the Sturgians have on the battlefield. Hence, it's why they struggle. Now, that doesn't mean we're not going to win these battles. The beauty of tactics is once you have a good tactical tool bag, right? Once you come by our channel once a day addictively and learn a bunch of savage tactics, you're going to be able to win in any situation with any kingdom against whatever you're facing. The tactics become universal, hence the title of this episode. Now we're going to fight this battle again. I will do some editing here, show you the exact same startup here, the units, and then we will jump into some advanced tactics. Now you see the custom battle menu here before we get this battle started. Both sides have tier 4 through 6 units, in other words, no garbage units, and we're outnumbered here by about 115 total troops. Alright, so we've got our 8 divisions set up here. Now you don't have to use 8, I always say this, but if you use less divisions, you have much less tactical potential in a battle. So what I've done here is made 3 cavalry divisions, the 2nd, 3rd, and 7th. We have 3 infantry divisions. The 1st, 6th, and 8th, and then the 4th and 5th are archers. You'll be able to slow this down, of course, and replicate this in your own battle, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be successful. The key is having our archers spread out and separate. In fact, we can get this other division kind of shoved up there, and what I'm going to do here is form 2 ring defenses with cavalry divisions, infantry in both of them, in particular shock troops in both of them, an infantry square out front, and then a cav division to the right. Now this first battle, we're just going to kind of speed along, and I'm not going to talk about this battle in great detail. What I want to do though is I think set a baseline here that this this formation is far superior to formations that are being shown by other channels. Not that these aren't great channels. Again, Strat Gaming Guide is an authority. I've learned a huge amount from Bannerlord, from his channel. This tactics, though, this is my forte, and so I think we can improve upon his work. It's a little bit like a great painter looking at someone who made a really good painting saying, that's really good, but I think we can do better. So the Battanians are coming into our circle here in the center. That's good. That's what we want, right? Because we have these shock troops. They're now told to charge. Observe our square out in front there. That's absorbing ammo. On the right here, the cavalry's charging. But our archers are highly protected, and they're going to be doing most of the killing. That will be a theme in this episode and in all of the episodes. And that is because the bottom line is archers and Bannerlord are king. Now the left side is basically unmolested, so eventually we'll charge with those shock troops as well, and we'll talk more about unit differentiating. We'll talk about breaking units into different types of units, etc. But this first example here, very simplistic. We're just attacking on both wings with shock troop divisions, and look at the results, right? It's a massacre so far. The spam of green is just covering the screen as our archers of shock troops work. I've now charged with the square, that square of infantry in the middle, just completely devastated the Battanian infantry, and the only thing that's left at this stage is the archers. At this stage we can do the old classic F1, F3, with one exception here. I typically like to pull shock troops back at the beginning of an F1, F3, and then have them charge. That way they're running behind shields. The guys in front here with the shields lead the way, absorb a bunch of arrows, and observe the death spam as we close. The Fiend Champs are spraying our troops with arrows while we come up to them. You're going to suffer losses, but we have a 3-to-1 advantage in numbers at this stage. Our archers are shooting. By the way, instead of charging with archers, if they have ammo, just spread them out like that. That's much more effective. And you can see this battle is over. In fact, we didn't just win here. We wiped the fucking floor with this Battanian force. So the previous battle, again, using Strat Gaming Guide's tactics, very solid tactics, will be effective in most situations. Our tactics here, though, we didn't just win. We obliterated the enemy, right? We have half of our army still upright. In a battle where the previous example we were unsuccessful. Now in all of this series we're going to get more and more complex tactics as we go along, so let's start some of that now. Alright, now we're going to fight a few more examples here, and we'll change the landscape a little bit, because anytime you have terrain you can take advantage of it with tactics, and that's what we'll show you in this segment. Of course we'll have tactics as well, but let's use terrain to our advantage. Now we'll set a baseline for this first example and let the sergeants fight it out, but let's make it even harder. Now I would still recommend you have more archers, and we'll get to that. We'll show some examples of why that's important. In fact, it might be important this first battle. We'll fight in a river landscape where there's a little bit of water, a little bit of variability to the hills, and we'll see how we do. Now this first battle, we're going to watch the AI get destroyed. This will be 60 seconds of buffoonery, and I'll try to point out some of the major mistakes that the AI uses here. Not so much to make fun of the AI, but just so that you don't replicate these in your own match. Now you can see how badly we outnumbered are. We have 21 Drudzinic champions. They have 51 Fiend champions. Basically, they have more of everything in this situation except archers. I guess we have like 2 or 3 more archers. Every other area we're outgunned, outmanned. So this is not a situation you're expected to win, as you can tell from the power bar. The Sturgeon's power bar is significantly smaller than the Battanians. Now a big advantage here is we are defending. In theory, the defensive unit has a major advantage in Bannerlord. However, you can see the AI is shuffling around with their archers. Their archers are not spread out. Right? This is already not good, right? Because they're going to get hit with tons of arrows from the Fiends. This is even worse. They didn't pull their archers back until the last second. The enemy closed with their infantry, and they barely did any damage to the infantry. The Fiend Champs are over there on the right just spraying away, while a huge Battanian vanguard just eats up the Sturgeon lines. The Sturgeon archers can't shoot because they're too close to their own infantry. There's a bunch of different problems here, and that's exemplified in the right column there. That's the death spam, and they got annihilated here. In fact, did not even kill half of the opposition here before they got chased off the battlefield. Now let's adjust things very slightly here. We'll just change this to commander. Actually, let's leave it the same exact scenario. That way we can show you from that baseline that we could still have success. Now, It's a little different location, but that's actually fine. We're going to be able to show you different dynamic situations and what an experienced commander would do with the Sturgeon force. Again, to basically emphasize that the Sturgeons are weaker in virtually every single area. The only area that they have a stronger advantage, the cavalry, it doesn't really work very well in Bannerlord. They just don't use their spears very well. Trample damage is non-existent, and cavalry AI is not very good, right? That is putting it gently. Now, I'm going to use the same setup for this entire episode. This probably half-hour episode today. We will run a shielded 1st Division and a shock troop 3rd Division. And I want to zoom in here. These trees are kind of making it hard to see. We're going to have a 3rd Division here that has all axes. In fact, let me turn this so you can see. No shields here, right? That's why I want these guys doing huge damage per second, DPS. The 1st Division is defensive. The 4th, 5th, and 6th are all going to be Archer Divisions. 3 Archer Divisions, right? For a lot of guys, that's confusing. I'm going to use a stronger 4th Division. That way, that 4th Division has our very best archers. Sometimes we'll do the 6th as well. And then 2 Cav divisions, right? We can have 1 Cav division that has javelins and the other one is just stronger units. In fact, can't really see again because of the trees. I'm trying to show you the difference. Our 2nd division has javelins and our 7th division is armored horses, Drudziniks. You can see the 2nd division here has javelins. All right. Let's go ahead and start setting up a tactical situation here. You want to essentially use the campaign as much as you can, right? So the enemy's way over there down the river. We're actually going to run over here because I want to use all those rocks in front of us. If I can drag our forces so that the enemy is forced to come through difficult positions of the terrain, all those rocks and hills there at the head of my spear, all of this water, that gives us a good chance for success, right? That line of rocks there is going to make it very hard for their archers to shoot at us. That's critical. Now let's put the 4th Division here, archers in the water. I like archers being in the water. There's actually big advantages to it. Now they can't escape very easily, so you got to be careful if they get chased down by cavalry or infantry. But it also means that whatever's chasing them is moving very slowly, which is good because Bannerlord has a momentum system when it comes to damage, etc. Now I'm going to put the shock troop division and a cavalry division over here on the left, and they're going to be part of what I call shield and shock. This is one of the most dynamic and important tactics in Bannerlord. You basically position shock troops that have no shield behind very strong units that have shields. One unit protects the other, etc. You get symbiosis. Next, we've got our 7th Cavalry Division. I'm just going to put them out front here to start to absorb arrows. Again, that's our strongest cavalry. You want those guys absorbing arrows with those huge Sturgeon shields. And then we can do 3 different archer lines, and we'll show you this in detail. This is going to be an episode where we do some slow-mo. We'll use the RTS mode some so you can see from the overhead view what this looks like. And then I will focus on things that I think are really important for players to understand. Now our archers here, this 5th Division, 5th Division can't shoot. They can't see, so I'm just moving them back a little bit. You as the commander are utterly in control of the line of sight for your archers in a situation like this, so you need to make sure that they can shoot. Now, protecting their wing with cavalry, I see their cavalry is kind of creeping on the hills over there. We'll watch them. We may have to move that cavalry division to intercept them. Much like Strat Gaming Guide, of course, we're going to try to intercept the other cavalry with our cavalry. In the center, we have a massive square, right? There's 100 and something guys in there, 163 guys. And over here, I'm just tucking our 3rd Corps against the rocks so they can't get shot at, right? Think of being in a first-person shooter. I don't see any cavalry coming on our left, so we can also put a Cav division right in front of them here. And these are your Jav Cav, right? And that's going to be important. I will show you that in a moment. Yeah, the enemy's kind of filtering through this little hole, but they're also coming through the water, so I can't really jam them up at that hole like I want to. The enemy's sort of trickling in almost like green water here at different locations. Now, this square is going to attract a huge amount of attention. Over here, by the way, let's just put cavalry in front of their division of cavalry. You can see them kind of trying to sneak up on us here. These guys all have javelins, right? So we're telling them to hold fire until the enemy's close, then you fire, right? F4 is your hold fire button. You want to use that as you become more comfortable as a commander, conserve ammo. Now they're pelting us with javelins here, but our guys are holding up their shields, and they're doing pretty well surviving there. Now this huge infantry division here that's attacking our square, we want to pull them right into the sights of our archers and javelin throwing cavalry here. All these archers have just beautiful line of sight, just firing right through here on the enemy. As our units back up, all of these archers are just spraying the enemy. Over here, you've got this division of cavalry throwing their javelins, right? Just smoked the guy right there. I'll do a little bit of slow-mo like this just so you can see that guy smoked the guy right in the face. And they're protecting, critically protecting those shock troops, just very patiently waiting over there. In the center here, the archers are just firing away. And you note almost nothing is bothering them, right? There's almost no units attacking them. You can back them up a little bit if you need to. But right now, they are just spraying away and shooting at point blank. Now the Fiends are throwing, or the Battanians are throwing javelins, and that is something you want to be aware of and even concerned of in a situation like this. Those javelins will do major damage to your archers. Over here, we're going to send the cavalry and the shock troops. Charge, right? Both of these guys now start to collapse, and an enemy that's sort of focused on the square, right? All these different shock troops charge. Now, we'll see if they do it. There's another feature I want to show you here. Here, this guy's perfect. This guy right here, look at this little pitiful axe. Let me focus on this guy. Little tiny axe here, huge axe on his back. Tell these guys to hold fire. That way they use their big axe. You really don't want your Sturgian axemen, your Sturgian heroic line breakers throwing their little pathetic throwing weapons. That's another reason to separate them from your shielded infantry. Your shielded infantry can throw throwing axes. There's no problem with that. They don't do much damage, but you don't want those Sturgian heroic line breakers standing there with the little tiny hatchet. Now our archers have beautiful line of sight here, and the enemy's trapped between the square that they can't kill and shock troops and cavalry over here on the left. So as our shock troops bore in, there's this little tunnel for our archers just to smoke these guys at point blank range. They're in the water, so they can't move very fast, and our archers are just smiling ear to ear at this stage, right? They could not be happier. Nothing's attacking them, and they're smoking infantry with no risk, right? These guys are just completely unmolested, and because of their positioning, how spread they are, every single guy can shoot. So we're doing about the maximum damage we could do there. This is still disconcerting, and we'll deal with them at the end. You notice I'm ignoring their archers. Now we're actually we're using the enemy's own troops here to cover up the archers. You notice the Battanians spread out there attacking our square. Well, it makes it so they can't see any of our units, right? These guys here are just charging and going nuts. A little chef's kiss here at the end of this battle. I like to move the infantry division through the Battanians, and what that does is it exposes all of these Battanians to our archers. They will now be shooting them in the back. Now, shock troops are still working, and again, the shock troops have been screened this whole time from enemy archers. They're getting attacked still, but anytime shock troops are attacking anything except archers or skirmishers, it's a win. Right, as long as they're not being hit with ranged weapons, they're crushing everything because they have those axes. Now over here, these archers are finally getting harassed by cavalry. Maybe I should have kept our cavalry back to protect them, but they're still doing okay. And the shock troops are now fully protected and blasting everything in the center. It's still a huge, a very big challenge at this stage. You can tell from the power bar that it's a close battle. But I like how things are going, and the death spam on the upper right there tells you that things are going well. It's probably a 3 or 4 to 1 kill ratio. Now our archers are getting low on ammo, and the Fiend Champs are still relatively unhurt. That's something we're going to have to deal with, and that'll be something I emphasize in this episode. In fact, I have divisions disobeying me and doing whatever they want right now, thanks to UI errors. One of the most important things to understand is that since archers are king and Bannerlord, the less you have in your army, the less success you're going to have. That is really simple, the bottom line. A lot of guys come up with scenarios for our disaster of war situations, and they have 10 or 15% archers. You're basically playing the game left-handed. I mean, assuming you play normally right-handed, you have a huge disadvantage because archers are so powerful. I'm not saying have 90% archers, although that can be effective in certain circumstances. What I'm saying is if you don't have 30% archers, you're at a huge disadvantage, and I think 50% is even better. And we're actually just going to hide here behind the shields, simply because I have no way to counter them. This has been painful. Of course, we're basically trapped here. The Fiend Champs are finally moving up, but we've lost about 40 troops. We couldn't charge through the water there. It would have been even worse. Finally, they're coming to us, but I don't think we're going to be able to overcome it. You can see from the power bar up there, you can see from the power bar that we're outnumbered. And even though we made it a lot closer than the AI did, this is still going to be a loss. Now, I don't take losses well. I'm a highly competitive alpha male. I see this and I get angry. I look for ways to improve. And how do you think we're going to improve, right? We're going to improve with more archers. 115 enemy forces, give or take less on the field. Let's add more archers here, and let's shove it in on these Battanians. Now, a lot of people are like, wait a minute. I thought the Sturgians have the worst archers in the game. They probably do, but the bottom line is that's like saying you have the slowest Ferrari, of all your friends. It's still a fucking Ferrari. And the bottom line is archers are the key to dominance in Bannerlord. Horse archers too. Horse archers and archers, and on a little bit lesser level, skirmishers are your keys to success. Basically, in a nutshell, ranged units. Now, I'm not thrilled about this landscape here, but this side over here I think we can use beautifully. Those guys are protected from the rocks there. We should be able just to have the enemy completely spread out and spammed from the side with archers. Javelins will be able to go nuts. Another example here where we're going to use the terrain to great effect. Anytime that you can limit how close the enemy archers can get, or even altogether whether or not they can shoot you, you want to take advantage of that. I mean, the best defense still in the world is a big pile of granite in front of your troops. Okay, let's see here. Exact same setup before. First and third is infantry. Third is shock troops. Fourth, fifth, and sixth are archers. And the seventh is cavalry. The guys using one archer division, the reason you want to have multiple is pretty simple. Flanking fire, right? The enemy's holding up their shield. Well, if you're shooting from 3 different directions, they can no longer block. And guys are like, what if they come in a square? The enemy never advances in a square, right? It's one of the changes the AI needs to make. If you're listening, Tail Worlds, developers, modders, make it so the enemy comes up in a square. All right, now getting a little hitch in our step here as we try to speed things up here. A lot of situations you want to be flexible with what you do with your tactics. In this situation, again, you can see we're outnumbered here by about 35%. We're significantly outnumbered, and you can see from the numbers, we now have 111 archers tier 4 and 112 tier 5. We now outnumber them from a ranged perspective. They have 151 archers there, Fiends, Fiend Champs, and Heroes. So we now have 60 more archers than them. Now, even though our archers are not good, one of the advantages that the Sturgians have over a lot of kingdoms is they have more ammo. Their tier 4, I think it's actually tier 3, 4, and 5 archers all have 2 quivers. Compared to the Imperials archers, the tier 3 and 4 only have 1 bag, only 1 quiver of arrows. So especially against the Empire, which we probably won't cover with the Sturgians, you could basically take the same approach as you would against the Battanians here, and it'll be successful. Especially though against the Imperials, you want a long, slow battle, defensive battle, because your archers are going to be shooting way after the enemy runs out of ammo. Now I'm going to start setting up archers across the riverbed here. We're going to stick the 4th Division on the other side here, though, and we're going to try to split up their forces. We're going to try to essentially make them come through the center or divide their forces. Either one of those would be fatal for the enemy. Over here we have the 2nd and 3rd. You're going to hear me say that a lot. The 2nd and 3rd is the shield and shock. Again, I'm referring to the shields of the heavy cavalry, the shielded horses, right? They're armored horses. And then, of course, the shock. Any shock troop is a 2-handed weapon unit, a polearm. So think of your elite Manablions, not so much spearmen, but Volgers, your Sturgian heroic line breakers, your palace guards, those type of units. Your Battanian Falksmen is a shock troop. They can't protect themselves, and so it makes sense to protect them with other units. Also, we're using this pile of granite up here, right? We can just tuck these guys up into that granite where the enemy can't really attack. Now, where did their cavalry go? They're sneaking. Here they are. They're hiding behind the rocks over there. I see you fuckers. I got blimp mode here. A lot of guys are like, well, you're cheating. You're using the RTS mode. Nah, we're definitely using this to help you guys. As a battlefield commander of many, many battles, I don't use this for myself. I don't need this. All right, let's back this Cav division against the granite. We're going to use those rocks over there. Again, the 4th division in the water. And the main advantage of that is that any enemy cavalry charging them moves like molasses. They move incredibly slow. And how do I know this, of course? Anybody ever been in the water and try to chase down archers with your horse? It fucking sucks. They're shooting you, you can't move, you're crawling right along. It's no fun. Now, some of their infantry is coming over here. I said I wanted to split their units, and it's happening. Now, they're coming over and they're getting butchered because they're point blank to archers. They're coming in 5 at a time. They're going to get smoked. Over here, these Cav divisions getting charged. This is basically a pawn for pawn trade, right? We're happy to give up our Cav division for their Cav division. Here is where we're going to do the killing. Now, we've got this square, and I'm just going to shove it and drag it around the battlefield. A square, once it's formed, is amazingly mobile. And what I mean by that is not that they're fast, but that they can move together with good cohesion, especially the Sturgians, and survive. So I'm actually going to shove it through this Battanian force. That is because I want the Battanians exposed to our archers here. These archers on 3 sides now are shooting right into the back of all these poor Battanian folks. They are absolutely fish in a barrel. This 3rd division is just standing here diligently waiting for orders. At this stage, you can charge with cavalry and these shock troops, right? Some of these guys are leaking up the hill, and because they're split, they're coming in 5 at a time, and they face the wrath of a bunch of axe murderers. Not going to go well for them. Over on the left, of course, it looks like it's basically a tie, a draw, but it's the center and these archers where we're winning. These guys are unmolested, completely unmolested. And again, you zoom in here, the tier 4 Sturgeon Archer, 2 quivers. Very important, because these guys are going to be firing for a long time. Up here, protected from their archers, right? Our cavalry and shock troops have destroyed their cavalry. They've destroyed any infantry that went up the hill. And I think most of their infantry is dead. In fact, it is dead. They have 23 infantry left. All right, so let's deal with the Fiend Champs this battle. This battle, we have way more archers, so we already have an advantage, but we're also going to ambush them with cavalry and infantry. Let's get them up the hill here. What we're going to do is make them come to us and then slam them from multiple angles with cavalry and infantry. Again, we're using God's original defenses here, right? The big pile of granite there is the best protection in the game, and never mind. I think the AI said, damn, they have an advantage everywhere. They have more cavalry, they have more infantry, and now they have more archers than us, and they fled. And look at that ass whipping. We didn't just win, we obliterated the enemy, even though we're outnumbered badly. So the AI here couldn't kill half of the Battanians. We destroyed them and still had 2/3 of our force left. Let's make it harder, right? Let's just fuck it. Let's just ramp the difficulty to insane and come up with more tactics here. This landscape is optimal for it because it presents so many different opportunities. And what a perfect opportunity here, right? We basically have a castle defense. Picture that's the walls, so to speak. We're going to defend the castles. And of course, anybody who's visited our channel know that that's one of our other areas of expertise, siege defense. All right, so let's go ahead in exact same formations, 4th, 5th, and 6th. I recommend you do this too, by the way. That way your fingers and brain get used to these positions and these units being where you left them. If you change these battle to battle, you're going to have difficulties. You'll hit the second button thinking it's cavalry, it's actually archers. You tell them to charge, and they all get smoked. Make sure your divisions are consistent battle to battle. All right, so same thing as before, 1st and 3rd. 3rd is shock troops, and it's very simple to split them with the Sturgeons, just to select shield with that 1st division and no shield with the 3rd. In an episode later on, we'll cover how you separate wildlings, for example, from Oathsworn and stuff like that. All right, let's go ahead and javelins to the 7th division here, and let's see what other kind of diabolical shit we can do. Again, the power bar looks even worse this time, and that's because we're outnumbered by like 250. We're hugely outnumbered, and it goes without saying that tactics are the only way we're going to win this battle. Now let's approach this just like we would with the castle defense, right? We've got this water over here. Let's put some archer divisions in the water. I've already mentioned why we're going to do that, right? If they do get attacked by cavalry, the cavalry will be highly ineffective against them because they're not moving fast. The depth of water is important. You as the commander, it's good for you to do some reconnaissance in a battle and go through the water. See how much it slows you down, because of course then you get an idea of how much the enemy is going to be slowed down. You see how slow I'm trudging right now. Now we're going to block up this little opening here, but we're going to let the enemy trickle through. Just like our castle defense tactics, we're going to have archers nearby, but not so close that they get attacked, and then we're going to allow the enemy to trickle into their death. And we can bring, let's see, we've got the second, third. What do I want to do with those? I want to have them over here. That way they're on the opposite side as our archers. I like to have my units attacking from multiple directions. That way if the enemy attacks one of your directions, one of your locations, there's probably something else attacking them from behind. Right? You want to get that flanking angle on them. It's one of the worst things that the AI does, and it doesn't matter whether it's RBM or not. They very readily allow themselves to be surrounded. The more divisions, the better from that perspective, right? Because that gives you more places you can put your troops. Over here, we're going to put the 7th Division that has javelins, and they will, of course, be chucking javelins into the enemy as they come down. They're also over there to protect against that cav division. Now here, we're just going to block up this hole. We want our archers firing through that little tiny opening. This also will limit how many of their archers could shoot, because they won't be able to get down here and set up. In fact, let's get these guys a little bit closer. You want them close, but not so close that they get zerged. That might not even be close enough. We'll see. We'll be able to adjust a lot in this battle. If you get into trouble in a situation like this, what do? You shove that square right into the hole. Just fill the whole thing, and the enemy won't be able to come through at all. They'll be basically stuck. Shock troops are diligently waiting. The AI very excitedly, you hear him yell and cheer and shit like that. That's the immersive battlefield mod, by the way. The AI's like, yeah, charge, and then the screen flushes green. I bet they're not as thrilled now, now that they're being shot to pieces and swinging at an impervious square. 150 Sturgeons there. They're not killing that square. They're beating on it. They're getting a kill or two, but meanwhile, they're being flayed by our archers. Again, this emphasizes the power of archers. These are Sturgeon archers. These are some of the weakest in the game, and the enemy's still being melted. Doesn't really matter. You could drag this square a little bit this way just to sort of speed this up. I also want to get our shock troops involved. We're going to use that square in conjunction with shock troops. Now, they haven't charged. They're starting to throw some throwing weapons. I'm not concerned. They haven't charged on the left. I'm a little perplexed. Why not? Notice their archers are not really a threat. They're kind of shooting from the tops of the hills, but it's, 20 guys instead of 100. A lot of their units are routing here as their square is unbroken. They're trickling up units here to our archers, but that's actually a good thing, I think. Now, I don't want these guys doing that, so I'm going to pull them back. See how they're charging the wrong direction? I want these guys actually to attack cavalry if they do attack. The enemy's being smoked here. Again, they're beating on a square. I guess we could just have them charge now. I want them to attack the cavalry that's out in front here, and a lot of times they're disobedient. Doesn't matter if you click on it or whatever. Here's the easiest way to do it. It's just to drag them in that direction. So come with me. You guys go this way. Now you can kill. Right? Once they get close, then they can start working. And the death span looks terrific. Again, you want to frequently look at that, right? Because that really is your scoreboard. That tells you how you're doing as a commander. If you got a problem, it'll come up in a big, long red flush. And say, oh shit, I charged with that archer division instead of infantry. I made a mistake. Now, we've chased their cavalry off. Something fierce on this side here. I am wondering about their archers. Their archers are largely unfought, so we're going to have to deal with them. So I'm already thinking about a flanking maneuver. In fact, let's tuck our shock troops over here out of the way and see how they're shooting our shock troops there. Get your guys out of line of sight. In fact, I just got smoked for 2/3 of my health. But their infantry's all but melted. They got a few archers kind of creeping up here. And at this stage, we can start to get offensive, right? We can start pushing archers closer. We're also going to loop around with both cav divisions. Amazingly, both of our cav divisions are up. The 2nd and 7th still have troops, even though they're bloodied, a little bit bloodied. Now, I'm going to send the cav divisions around the sides. We're going to do that because we're going to backdoor and flank the shit out of all these archers. In the middle, we have the 1st division here. We're going to put a shield wall and shove right into the face of their archers. They basically enjoy those shields. Meanwhile, we can move our archers up, and we're going to start flanking whatever's on top of that ridge. In fact, let's take a look here. I'm dragging the 3rd Division too. The enemy's starting to rout. All their infantry just screamed, and I think this battle is over. Oh, shit. Okay. They do have a bunch of archers here sort of waiting for us. So, perfect. We can add this to the episode. How do you deal with this, right? They're starting to kite. This is potentially a dangerous situation. The most important thing is speed and movement. Make sure your units are in line formation here, which is counterintuitive to a lot of people. They're like, wait a minute. Don't you want to be a shield wall against archers? Not when they're running and trying to kite like this. This is kiting behavior. You can see they're starting to shoot. When they're running back like this, you want to be in line formation. Your guys with the shield will still block. They just don't block as tightly, right? It's like 50% effective. It's much more important here, though, that we close. So cavalry's following me. That's part of the reason the AI is running, because they have a bunch of cavalry coming in on them. Our cavalry, once they're close, can be told to charge. Another good way to do it is just to have them follow you. And look at our infantry is now here. Right? The first and third, because they weren't in shield wall, are running fast. They've now closed on the enemy. In between all of that, I told the archers to get up to this plateau, so they'll be here in about 10, maybe 20 seconds. And now we just closed the deal, right? Cavalry charging them from behind, angry infantry charging them in front. They're starting to scramble, and AI morale is cratering as they get dissolved here by our tactics. This battle is over. And even though we're outnumbered by almost 50% in this battle, we don't just win. We fucked the prom queen, right? We annihilated the Battanians here. Now, we use terrain. We use tactics, of course. That's going to be a theme throughout this series. Speaking of this series, as we wrap this episode up, more than half of our army is alive. You want to subscribe, right? You want to see more, you want to hit notify, that way you know when new episodes come out. Leave any comments or requests down there in the video description area. With all that said, friends, I appreciate you, and I will see you fellas and ladies next time.